The purpose of the Year 10 IRP is to provide you with an opportunity to be creative, essentially. Um, Quite often in English, we get bogged down in analysing text and writing analytical responses and interpreting things. And this is your opportunity to really immerse yourself into a creative text that you create. And, it's a really good opportunity. A lot of students really enjoy the freedom and the scope that they get within this project. The other thing that we're trying to do is just to introduce you to what Extension 2 English is like. So in Year 12, you can study Advanced English, Extension 1 English, which are both coursework, but Extension 2 is a major project, and this is a watered-down version of what you might do in Extension 2. So if you find that you like this sort of learning, then this might be something that you'd like to pursue into the senior school. What we want you to do is pick a type of text that you want to create, and you have to really get in and research that form. And it's not until you understand how that form works that you can create a good version of it. So there's creativity involved, but obviously we're going to underpin it with some ideas. We're doing the IRP as a genre study, so each class will be looking at different genres, and then from within that, you'll build your creative work around that. So you'll be, that will become clear when you start doing the coursework. Now, there are two parts to that we're assessing in the IRP. So the first thing is actually the piece of work that you create, your major work. Okay, and when you look at the scope of what you can do, then you'll see that there is a good variety. And I'm just going to talk through each of them so you have a bit of an idea on what they entail. So first of all, you can do a piece of creative writing, and you'll see it's around 2,000 to 2,500 words. And rather than just writing a single narrative, what we're getting you to do is either write where you write a story from different perspectives. So you might take characters from within the text that you're studying or from a story within the genre, and you might create a new story but built on the back of the original story. And there have been lots and lots of stories and films that have been successful in doing that. You might look at a minor character who doesn't have much of a voice in that story, and write from their perspective, write from a couple different characters' perspective. Another thing that you can do is you can write from different time periods. So you might be writing from the voice of one particular character, but they might be in two different worlds or two different times. You might have the young character and then the old character or something like that. So it has to be a bit more complex than just having, a straight, simple, linear narrative with one character. Of course, you can create your own characters and have imaginary characters that, you create yourself, that fit into that the genre that you're doing. You can write a very earnest, sincere type of story, or you can play around with the genre. So you might like to write a satire, for example, where you send up what the genre is all about. So there's lots of scope within that to make it creative and interesting. You could also write a narrative where what you do is you are essentially writing a narrative, but within that narrative, you're incorporating a suite of styles. So you might incorporate some poetry or some reports of some kind. So they might be like newspaper articles, or if you're doing crime fiction, it might be a forensic report or a detective's report, or, you're incorporating little things like that into it. You might do some stream of consciousness writing. If you're not sure what that is, that would be an interesting thing for you to look up. So there's lots of different avenues and different ways of writing that creative piece. And a good thing to do would be to talk with your teacher once you've come up with a concept, and they'll guide you in that. The next option is speeches, and we're getting you to write two different types of speeches. So you might find once again that you have a minor character who doesn't have much of a voice in the text or one of the stories from the genre that you're studying, and so you might write a speech outlining that character's point of view on a particular aspect of the story, or you might use them and take that character and develop a new thing. So take them out of the novel or the film and get them to create their own piece, and have their own original voice. You might be an expert in a particular area. So you might be an expert on vampires if you're doing the Gothic genre, for example, or you might be a curator of a museum, or be a specialist in a particular area. You can actually be you can take on the persona of the author, for example. So you might pick up on Arthur Conan Doyle and write from his perspective, adopt his persona and write a monologue from his perspective. And there are so many options. You just have to be a bit creative in how you think of them. And as I said, you want to try and aim for two different types of speeches. So you might, in your first speech, might provide this perspective of a minor character through a monologue, but then you might make the second speech you do a lecture or a persuasive speech, or there's a whole variety of things that you can tease out. And once again, it's just a matter of conversing and conferencing with your teacher and getting some guidance there. The next one is a graphic novel, which is different to a picture book or a comic book. And if you have the opportunity to have a look at a graphic novel, you'll see that there is a real density to them. There's a lot of detail, and that we're wanting you to write, 6 to 8 pages of dense images and written text. So you're going to tell a narrative through that. Sometimes you might have no dialogue or written text on a page, and then other pages you'll have more. And we've given you a guide of about 500 words for an introduction and for the either dialogue or the written text that is incorporated into the graphic novel. So if you're a bit artistic, that's an interesting one to do. If you like drama or you like film, then writing a one-act play, a script for either stage or film might be more to your liking. And it's a really good one too. It's interesting because you get to create a story and develop a bit of a conflict. Something dramatic's going on, and then you're going to build that round set and stage directions, and primarily through dialogue. So that's a really a good choice to make too. The next one's an interesting one, multimedia, and it's quite broad in its description. But basically, what you're going to do is combine a range of forms such as text, sound, music, visuals. And this is one that you would really want to talk to your teacher about. Then there are different mediums that you can do it in. One example is that you could make a diorama out of cardboard and build music and some written text into it. And some people have done a suite of, they've made a couple of objects that all tell their own little story. So if you're doing a crime fiction unit, for example, they might be part of the evidence makeup, and it might be you might have a pegboard that has the crime and the steps of the crime as the detective traces them on them, and then have diaries, like a diary with revealing evidence within that and some other physical objects. So there are there are things that you can do in that regard as well. And the sound there might be, you might have an audio recording of a confession, or of, you've secretly taped someone, um, as they've confessed to the crime, or they've revealed some truth that is pivotal to the crime. So there's lots of scope in that one too. So it's a good one to think about as well. The next one, the verse novel, is basically, it's an extended poem where you tell a story through. So it is a narrative, but told through poetry. And there's a lot of opportunity for you to experiment with your poetry within that. So it doesn't have to rhyme. You can break it down into many shorter poems, and you can have words moving all over the page, and you can really experiment with form and have a bit of fun with that. And anything goes really in that realm. So if you haven't read any verse novels, Stephen Herrick's an Australian poet, and he writes some really good verse novels. So that would be a good starting point. But I'm sure if you look online and just go to a publishing company, or search for verse novels, you'll see that how the form is sort of experimented with, and so that's a really good option as well. And then finally, you can create your own film, and it needs to be 5 to 6 minutes in length, thereabouts. That's the rough guide for you. And basically, what you have to do is script, shoot, edit, and publish a film. And we're looking for an artistic style of film. So beware, you do focus on film techniques to help convey your narrative. So that might be the camera angles and the use of lighting. You might have symbols in your, some strong symbol or a motif running through your story. You might be creating suspense through sound effects, all those sort of things, if you love making films, then that's a really good option too. So that's a good starting point for you. And as I said, whichever one that you pick, you're going to have to do some investigation into the form to help you, and certainly planning and doing a bit of drafting and checking and experimenting is going to be important. What we notice when we mark the IRPs when they come in is that the students who've invested time in their projects really stand out, and they're well and truly rewarded. So here's a great opportunity for you to be creative and to really enjoy your learning. And so I hope you do enjoy that, and I wish you good luck in it. The second part of the project obviously will develop as you go along, and it's the reflective task. And you'll see that as you're going along, creating, editing, planning, you're going to be keeping a process journal, all the things that are going on. So that might be sort of like a form of a rough diary where you're keeping track of where you're up to, and when you have random ideas, you write them in your process journal. And if you get to points where you're not sure how to solve things, you might write a couple of questions that you want to talk to with your teacher when you're conferencing. You might be looking to your parents and friends and other people to give you some guidance on particular areas when you're looking for inspiration, or if you're stuck at a point. So you would put all those sort of things in too. You might be doing research. Well, you definitely will be doing research, and so that's the place when you just throw everything into your process journal. You might also find, for example, if you're whichever topic you're doing, if you might be doing the war unit, and you might go, well, I want to set my story in a particular area where there was a war experience. So you might do a bit of research and find a newspaper clipping or a song lyrics or something like that. So you can pop them in as well. So all those things will go into your process journal, which is really just your working draft. You'll have your drafting in there as well. And at the end, when you've finished your major work, the following week you will write a reflection. And here's the outline here. Basically, you're going to outline the idea that you explored, what area or areas of the genre you were interested in, and how that's demonstrated, how you've brought that to life in your creative work. And this is the important one. What is it that you've done to shape your major work? So if you're using a film or creating a graphic novel or whatever it might be, what did you actually do? So you're going to go in and find particular things, moments in your work, and you're going to say, at this point, I used this device, or I was trying to convey this idea and I did it in this manner. Okay. And obviously this next one is, getting you to look back over your process journal and just the journey you've been on in creating your text, and working out, well, what is it that you've learnt about writing, or about creating a project, or about learning itself. And maybe it has to do with your perspective. And you look back over the time period and you find, wow, at the start I thought there was no way I was able to do this. But doing it's provided with lots of confidence to pursue that in the senior school. And don't forget that this is an English task, but there are a number of major works or researchy type projects in other subjects in the HSC, and this is a really good starting point. Well, it might not be the starting point, but it's a good opportunity for you to develop some skills and to consolidate some of the skills you already have, so that that your projects in the senior school are so much easier for you. So that's the overview of where we're headed this term, and you'll find that in the beginning of the unit, over the first couple of lessons, there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to get a bit of a scope of what your genre is, and what the general characteristics, and what the history of the origins and then the progression of the genre have been, and then you'll be contributing to that as well. So good luck with that, and we look forward to looking at your projects when they're done.